Welcome, Reanimated fans. Hope everybody's having a great week. This is H.A. Conrad coming to you as always with my intrepid co-host, Stuart Tiffin. Hello, Stuart.
Ahoy.
Ahoy. We are going to be talking about the season finale of Interview with a Vampire Season 2 today. But before we get to that, we have actually more news items than we normally do, which is kind of fun. But how are you doing, Stuart? What's going on the West Coast? How are the fire watches out there?
Standard at this point, sadly. Standard fire watches. Yeah, it's going well. Everything's great.
Cool.
Knock on wood. Don't say that too loud or the earthquakes will hear me and then they will strike. How's the East
But
Coast?
East Coast is good. There's been some weird
Any
kind of
meteorites making sonic booms over your city lately?
not lately, but the bigger news this past week has been there's been some like really intense, crazy flooding in random parts of like Connecticut and upstate New York. Just like some of the post-hurricane weather just kind of sat there and just honestly took out a couple of towns, and it was a little bit crazy, and nobody was expecting flash floods. So
Yeah.
that's been going on. But just kind of enjoying the tail end of summer here, which is all right, and hopefully no more of that will happen. So, but yeah, I obviously jumped ahead and watched the end of the Interview with the Vampire, and I watched the finale, so I'm very curious to hear what your thoughts are on that. But um, before we get to that, let's just run through a couple of these news items. Um, Something that just keeps coming up, and much like the theme of the movie Will Not Die, Salem's Lot. There is yet another article about the release date. Just to remind our listeners, this has been kind of an ongoing saga. I'm not sure all the drama that has been surrounding this, but they kind of went back to re-edit. There were some very pointed comments from Stephen King, just saying, why hasn't this been released? It's still not been disclosed a specific release date. And now they're like, it's probably going to be direct, like to streaming, is what I gathered from this, even though they were previously saying no. And keep in mind, this was supposed to be um, like March 12th, and that's when they had said that they were going to be just sort of doing a direct to streaming thing. Um, I don't know. It's going to be I will watch it when it comes out, if and when it comes out, but what's your thought on this? I mean, I wonder what the issue is, because this at this point it seems a little it I am worried about what this will be, but it also seems just interesting and problematic, because you would imagine there's enough of a fan base, and especially if they can get it to streaming like before Halloween, they're probably going to get a little bit of traction, right? I don't know.
I mean, anything Stephen King is willing to call muscular on Twitter, I think is going to be really good. And
Yeah.
so I'm excited to
And
watch it.
they are, just to be clear, they are saying like, it was set to premiere in October, but no specific date. It still hasn't announced a date. So maybe it will.
But it's coming to
But you would,
Max, so it'll be something we can see in theory. I mean, yeah, still with no
right.
date, we'll not hold our breath, but we've been waiting for this for a year and a half. Let's get it, guys.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess what my question is that if it is actually going to be happening in October, you would think that they would want to capitalize like as like a lead up, right? And there were some people in the comments that said that it is confirmed to be released in the UK on October 11th. So I don't know about that, but maybe that's a UK person that's following it. So anyway, we'll keep you posted on that. Certainly we'll review it. I think we kind of have to at this point, right? Next up, not a lot, yet another zombie film we don't have a ton of information about, but with one of our favorite actors, Daisy Ridley, and that's going to be We Bury the Dead, which takes place in Tasmania. I don't know, the premise of it sounds pretty cool. I don't know what your thoughts are, Stuart, but
The
I'm
premise is
excited.
pretty wishy-washy. There's like a military something, and she's looking for somebody, and we have no idea what the rest of this is going to be about.
Okay,
And we don't even
it's a
have we have no
standard.
release date. So I'm
No.
excited because she's a good actor, but this is, I was really just happy to see this article because we have seen very little about this. And so at least it's still,
out there.
shuffling its way toward a release.
Hey, I don't I think it's like a standard zombie premise though. It's like there's some military involvement. She's going to find her husband who may or may not be dead, and zombies will ensue. I mean, I don't think you need much more than that. But like we'll see, but I can't imagine that she's going to be bad in anything that she's in. She's really fun to me. So
Yeah.
we'll have to see what happens. Maybe it will be one of these films that's just like kind of a um, just sort of like pops into existence and streaming in October. Maybe there will be a lot of these, so we'll have to keep our eyes open.
Hmm. I
Um,
hope for their sake that they get a theatrical release, but maybe that's not everybody's cup of tea.
I don't. It doesn't feel like theatrical release to me, but I could be wrong. We'll see. Mm. All right, you're gonna be covering this next gamer thing
You have to say it
again
like
for
that, H.A. Conrad. Games are cool. Games are cool
they
too.
are. Oh, I don't deny that they're cool. I just can't get addicted to them. It's bad enough I'm addicted to my word games and such.
So Dying Light
Um,
is getting a third installment, which this is the news. This was announced during Gamescom, the big gaming convention in Cologne, Germany, which happened last week. And this is exciting news because I just picked up Dying Light 2 again and started playing it. So if you like parkour and you
hmm.
like zombies, this is the gaming franchise for you. This next chapter kind of continues in the same vein. You're a person who is afflicted with a zombie virus that gives you insane parkour abilities. And you have to usually what they did well with Dying Light 2 was like some good factional storytelling and storylines, choices that matter, really good setting, set dressing rather, and the ability to like use your environment to move around, which is parkour, and that was it's done well. So I'm looking forward to it. And if you recall, Dying Light 2 also had a deal with Walking Dead where they let you like get Lucille and a sheriff's hat and a couple of other items as I think they were just for looks, not like that they were super powerful items or anything, but it was still cool that Walking Dead did a little deal with the Dying Light Techland folks. Anyway, Dying Light 3 is coming. I'm not sure when. I wouldn't expect it this year. Maybe next year.
All right. Well, it'll give you time to just continue to replay the second installment. And how is it going back to it? Does it feel good? Does it feel clunky?
It feels good. They've introduced some new mechanics that I'm having a bit of a hard time with, but it is a fun game. And when that sun goes down and the ambient, like the acoustics in that game, the sound design, it's really freaky. And so I
Hmm.
enjoy playing it for the visceral feel like fear that it can, mostly through sound design. You can hear zombies chasing you. It's really well designed. So I like Dying Light. I think it's a good franchise. I hope the third one is going to be just as good as the second, if not better.
Nice. Very exciting news. Well, and it feels a little speedy to me, but the 28 days later, the next, or sorry, 28 days later, the next installment in the franchise, 28 years later, has apparently finished filming, which it feels speedy to me, but I mean, it feels like they've been moving along with this. Some things were revealed in the article that we saw, which I think we kind of guessed, but the leads in it, Jodie Comer, Aaron Taylor Johnson, Ralph Fiennes. Wait, is it Ralph
Rafe,
Fiennes? Ralph
Rafe,
Ray wait, it's
we
Ray
had this conversation. It's Rafe
Yes, I know,
Fiennes.
I know. Okay, here we go. I'll always get it messed up on that one. Anyway, but the point is that they are the leads, and they do mention that Killian Murphy is set to return, but they say that it's in a surprising way, which means to me probably very little film time. That's what I'm guessing. And he's going to reprise his role, of course, but doesn't mean he comes back as a zombie. Doesn't mean he comes back as sort of this little cameo. I mean,
Well,
he's
it's
involved in the production.
it's in the middle of the article. There's a paragraph. And 28 days later, we saw Jim barely escaping the horrors of a post-apocalyptic England, and it appears he's not out of the woods yet. With multiple endings considered for the original film, the one where Jim survives became canon, leaving his character
Right.
ripe for a return. I mean, you're right; he could still be infected in his return, but
But it could also just be a passing along the torch to the next group and that storyline goes forward, that kind of a thing. I don't know. We have to see what happens.
yeah.
And I'm very excited to see this. There's no release date obviously yet. But the fact that they've finished wrapping,
And the
they
production on
they
the
say
sequel is about to begin
well, and they did sorry, they
on the
did say it's
next
going to be
the fourth movie. I mean, you
right.
know.
I mean, I should correct myself. They say that it's set to hit theaters June 20th as of now. Um, but I would say I would take that with a grain of salt as we see how the editing goes. However, this seems to be um, moving pretty quickly, and the fact that they're already going to jump into filming the sequel or the production of the sequel
In
is
an
good
era when
news.
it's so difficult for people to get movies made, this does feel like these guys have some kind of
Fast.
secret sauce
Yep.
where
So,
we're looking at all these movies just get like pulled from release calendars or just like, oh, here, this is going to
right.
happen, and then nothing happens with it.
Hey,
Remember, we were even
I
talking about a movie with Colin Firth called New York Will Eat You Alive. We talked about this like a couple years ago. We think we saw some deadline articles and then absolutely nothing. I'm sure it just kind of fizzled out. But this is so exciting to me to see a genre film with this kind of pedigree and the fact that it seems to be getting fast tracked, and I think that that's great.
given the fact that they're already starting the next like production and they're really moving this forward. I mean, it's impressive and I'm all for it. So let's keep an eye on it and let's hope for the best.
Totally. One other thing I wanted to talk about, I assume we're not going to talk in detail about the fact that The Guardian just published a favorable review of Walking Dead Dead City because they haven't seen the next season. Nobody has because it's not coming out till next year.
Right.
But they I don't know why they would just publish this now unless it was like a reprint of something they wrote. No,
Yeah, it's kind of
it's dated
strange.
today. Yeah, that's weird. They gave it 3 stars, which doesn't sound like that much out of five, but I think I've seen some. The Guardian can be pretty persnickety about their reviews sometimes, and so I was happy to see them saying like this is like a B movie fun train ride. I was like, yeah, cool, man. Let's that works for me too.
I thought we were skipping this because it was kind of weird and strange the way it was set
Well,
up, but it's all
I
good.
also just like to point out when the journalism industry does something weird, like that weird Conan O'Brien, Nathan Fillion interview that we talked about a week or two ago. Like, why
Yep.
did that happen? Why is
Yeah,
the
it was
Guardian
odd.
doing this? That's fine, whatever. One last thing I want to talk about before we get to Interview with the Vampire, H.A. Conrad. But we are both big fans of the Alien franchise.
Hmm.
And I did get to go see Alien Romulus last week or Monday night actually, so I guess it's technically this week. And I rather enjoyed it. So I would say get thee to a theater
Oh,
and
interesting.
enjoy. Yeah, it's enjoyable. There's a lot of familiarity to that world, to that universe. Fede, I think I forget his last name, but the director obviously also cares deeply about that franchise. Watch it. There's some great performances.
All right, I will take that under advisement.
Have you been
But
leaning
I'm
away
glad.
from it by design or just
No,
not
I just haven't had
no
time,
time?
and
Yeah.
sometimes it's hard to get to the theater before everything goes out,
Oh,
especially at this time of the year. But so now on to our topic of the hour: Interview with a Vampire, the finale of season two.
yeah.
I think they leave obviously enough of a window open for this to continue on.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but they do a great job at tying up a lot of loose ends. But they still leave some holes in there. So um, that is the end, and there's nothing else. I think is the name of this one, right?
What's it? Yeah, it's
That's
something.
the end of it, and there's nothing else, or something like that.
And that's the
You
end of
know,
it. There's nothing else.
this is following the death of Claudia. Basically, all the gloves have come off, all the blinders have come off. there is
Uh,
definitely some questions for me
I would
about a
say
lot
there's
of
definitely still blinders until like halfway through the episode.
true, true, true. But the whole, I mean, the episode as a whole, everything kind of
Oh,
is
by the
out
end of it,
there.
everything is
Yeah,
off. Yeah.
yeah. And I
Yeah.
think they do a good job at revealing it at the storytelling for this episode. So,
This episode honestly had me feeling feelings. Like I have not usually been drawn into the emotional element of the storytelling in this show, but I will say the scenes between Lestat and Louis later on in
yeah,
this episode are just like incredibly acted, and I think well designed to elicit like a reaction. Um,
yeah, and the actors Jacob and Sam. uh, I really think that their chemistry is, and it's what you would expect it to be between Lestat and Louis,
yeah.
but in those scenes specifically, really incredible. And again, I think this is sort of like deliberate, but the chemistry between Louis and Armand is there, but it feels like nothing when you see the chemistry between these two characters. Is
Yeah,
that fair?
their chemistry is like a 3 out of 10, and then Louis
Yeah,
and Lestat are like 11.
yeah.
It feels like, yeah. So
And
that's
it is really just amazing acting. So I was really so we'll get to that, but just impressive acting and interaction between these two characters and actors. So um, yeah. Um,
yeah. So
so
let's start at
let's
the
get into it.
beginning. Yeah. So you've got Louis, I think his voiceover is talking to Daniel, and Armand is in the room too in Dubai, and you're looking at scenes of his like where he's being held behind that door. You can kind of hear him
Hmm.
moaning and scream. Well, I guess screaming eventually. And between Louis and Armand, they're both kind of talking about what's going on. Louis has gotten kind of catatonic almost in his retelling of the story, but he's talking about basically how he lost the will to live.
Hmm.
I thought the line about did anybody ask Lazarus if he wanted to be resurrected was kind of an interesting question to
Hmm.
ask. And meanwhile, while they're talking about like what's been going on with you, Armand, and he's like, oh, I was being punished, and I've been like, I'm the bottom of the barrel, I'm the lowest guy in the coven again. And we're seeing scenes of him doing menial work. And meanwhile, Daniel is like having some sort of I am chat conversation with Raglan James, and you're not quite
Hmm.
sure what he's asking for, but they thought Talamasca is like talking about getting him something or like how it's an interesting request. He's doing all this like my usual question stands: how the hell, how the hell is he
Yep.
doing this? Because he's also saying one thing out loud and typing another thing into his computer, which is actually kind of difficult to do. So maybe it's
It
the
is
fact
pretty
that
difficult.
he's like intellectually capable of deceiving two telepathic creatures, perhaps.
Right.
I mean, can we believe that? Maybe we can.
Maybe.
But
Um,
during this telling, and while Malloy is still like, working some angle on his computer, we see that Armand has decided to free Louis and opens up his veins and just lets the blood seep through the rocks and then disappears. Like he doesn't want to be there, I guess, when Louis wakes up. Did you understand what that was about?
no, I mean, I think he knows just based, I mean, he can hear Louis's thoughts probably. I think he knows that Louis is um kind of crazy.
Oh,
But
he
I
definitely is in Crazy
but
Town. Yeah.
also no matter, I mean, we Louis knows this too. Armand betrayed him. He betrayed him. He is the cause of Claudia's death. And no matter what he does or what he has done to support Louis, even if Louis believes that he's the one who was there as like supporting him and didn't want him to be part of it, that is there, and I don't think it takes a lot to get to the idea that he's not going to necessarily be psyched to see Armand when he is risen, basically. But he does it anyway, and that's so there's a lot going on. Like he'd been buried in this coffin in the rocks. He can't move. It's painful because he's also starving. And there's a couple of moments that, he'll be saying, "Oh, was I screaming? I didn't realize I was screaming." And, that's like that you can hear it in the everybody outside of the crypt can hear it because it's
Yeah.
just, so he's probably not in the best state of mind. And
The
so,
description of like the rocks of his skin is healed around the rocks
yeah,
in the coffin too. That's pretty graphic and
yeah.
pretty cool. Yeah, he goes completely cuckoo bananas though. Once he gets out, he disappears through the sewers, gets to a cemetery, and then kind of sets up shop in a mausoleum where he there's just a ton of bodies in there by the time he's done. He's done with this scene. He's just
Mm,
killing people. He's feeding, but
yeah.
he has definitely gone to crazy town while he works on his plan to murder everybody. He's got like a one of the first guy he killed is now his like inner voice, and he's talking to him about what he's gonna do and how he's gonna do it. Um, I love all this stuff. I love Jacob Anderson just really leaning into being a crazy town. And then
Mhm.
Armand is also reaching out telepathically and being like, dude, you need to get out of town. What are you doing here? I'm trying to figure out, given the meta plot of this episode, what was Armand's real goal? Why did he let him go? Because I think he does love Louis. I think Armand
Well,
does love.
I think Armand is always the victim, and I mean they play this up in the books a little bit more. They make it a little bit more clear, like the way that he became a vampire and was kind of raised, if you put it that way.
Hmm.
He is constantly this, like, he doesn't ever fully believe the what he considers the blasphemy that Lestat is and Lestat's way of life. I mean, I think he'd like to, but he's just of a weaker constitution and weaker mind, honestly. And he kind of keeps the tenets of what the Theater of the Vampires was based on, this coven was based on. He never really let it go. So in some ways, he felt like even though he loved Louis, that Claudia needed to be punished. I mean, some of this could come from a selfish point of view, I
Yeah,
guess.
it's like super hypocritical still.
Yeah,
If
like, and I
he
and so I don't think that he is actually doing, like, I don't think he is minimized as much as he's saying he was,
oh
and
no, but
he's
I mean
kind of hiding that from Louis, obviously, and so
yeah, they don't even
he
really
doesn't.
go into that in the rest of the plot. After the
No,
big reveal is revealed, they don't go back and be like, actually, I wasn't just doing menial tasks. I was, still
right,
I don't know that he's running the show,
right.
but there's I
Um,
do have some lingering questions about what his power level really is. Would
right.
Santiago ever have been able to be the leader of the coven?
No, no, I don't think so.
Hard to
And
imagine. Yeah.
and especially as we find out a little bit more about Santiago as we get to the end of his story here. But I think he just feels incredibly guilty and has a lot of regrets, and that's why he lets him out. But he also knows that he can't, sort of in the way that things are currently and what Louis knows or thinks about him, he knows that that's just not gonna be. And he knows Louis may kill him too, I think. So I just think he's trying to play it both ways, and that's why he's created this little narrative as well. So
And he's trying to persuade Louis to leave because maybe his love for Louis is what has prompted him to try to save his life, and then he would like him to live, and so he's like, please leave town.
right. But Louis
It's
is like, yeah, not before I totally destroy everybody
Yeah.
first.
And he asks Armand during their telepathic conference, he's like, did you save me at the trial? And Armand's like, of course. Yeah, I
Yep.
did.
Mm-hmm.
And Louis says, okay, in that case, don't be at the theater tomorrow night because it's gonna be
Yep.
crazy. And that's
Yep.
when we transition into the next scene of uh his revenge. We've seen shots of him like making Molotov cocktail kind of stuff or a lot of soaking a lot of rags in petrol. And then he goes down into the crypt of the Theater to Vampire. He has this monologue here where he's talking about how vulnerable they all are. Once they commit themselves to their
Mm-hmm.
coffins, you could basically march a band through there and they wouldn't hear anything. I think that that's a really cool detail to share. Um, and it doesn't really pay off for the theater of vampires. This is kind of why in canon of vampire stuff, they usually have thralls or humans who they've got under their spell to be their guardians during the day, or wolves or whatever it is that they have, like in Dracula, It's this so it is interesting that they're saying, yeah, they're really vulnerable during the day once they go in their coffins. But these guys haven't come up with any sort of safeguard for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it is kind of unbelievable that they wouldn't have it a little bit more secure.
They've
Um,
got the groupies, the people who love their theater so much, and they're sitting there in their makeup all
right.
the time. You'd think maybe they would have hired some of them to be like, hey, hang out here during the day, or I don't know. Not that that would have posed much of a problem for Louis, but still,
Yep.
it's just interesting. And but it is cool that he's able to just kind of, you know, douse everything. I think I would have probably put Claudia's diaries in my knapsack before I started the fire because
Probably, yeah.
he's then kind of he has to act pretty quickly because some of them get up and are attacking him. He says he kills
Yep.
two of them with a sword and or something. He has like a machete. He kills two of them with the blade, and a third was like half burned, still holding his clarinet. But four escaped. I thought
Hmm.
he was counting Armand when he was
So
doing
did
this math.
I, and so that was kind of weird. So I don't know who that anyway.
Well, we end up learning who that was
Yeah.
as the episode goes on, and it's not who you would have thought, which is kind of
Nope.
cool. But he shows off some pretty insane powers. Even in this scene, it's not like he's lighting matches. He's doing this all with his mind. He can ignite uh petroleum soaked rags with his vampire powers. And I
Hmm.
wonder if this is ever something that we thought Louis could do.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I don't think
Yeah.
I think this is new. And I mean, look, even in the books, Louis is like the weakest of the vampires, just
Yeah,
for a variety of reasons. So, so anyway, he, um, but this is a fun little vengeance montage, and
sure.
given the like incredibly raw scenes of Claudia's death, I think it feels warranted. And there is a lot of that. And then, I will say, like, he stalks Santiago and really like, has sort of, not sort of, like, he tries to take him down to sort of his foundation and now can read his mind in a way that, he can't be shielded, which again, it's like, was this because he drank Armand's blood and Armand's blood is a lot more powerful? Armand never made a another vampire, so it's not like he made Louis, and I didn't know that this could, maybe that's how he got those powers. That's maybe implied. But
Oh, it's
in any
possible.
case, in any
Yeah,
case, Santiago is now just totally at his mercy, and the tables have turned, and so there's this whole thing about Santiago's creation, and in fact how he is just a weak vampire named Francis, apparently, who wanted to be called Santiago, and he gets mocked by Louis. And honestly, it's a bit anticlimactic when he cuts off Santiago's head, but
too
he
easy.
just kind of kicks it down the street, and that's that. And so
It's
then,
gratifying though. I don't think we needed some long drawn out,
no, no, no,
Saruman
but
versus Gandalf battle. Louis does the thing where he pulls all of or he pushes all of Santiago's buttons, Francis's buttons, so that he just jumps out of the sewer and Louis is ready
mhm,
for him. And I think that's the perfect way in a way to just dispatch Santiago. He's nothing. He's just a bully. And so sometimes you can just cut their head off, I guess, when they jump out of a manhole. Like I felt like that
yeah.
was pretty appropriate. And I did like that Louis just got inside his head and provoked him with all of his weaknesses, and that was great.
The scene between, what did you think of the scene between Louis Lestat and Armand
Yeah. Yeah.
when you
This
first watched it? Did you rewatch it after you saw the episode? Because I did.
I didn't rewatch it. I felt like it was fresh enough that I didn't need to, but it's another great scene. It's full of all this anger, and it's kind of interesting when Armand and Louis both like put their fire hands up and oops, put their fire hands up, and Lestat's like, dude, I've got old blood in me. I've got the blood of Magnus, and they're like, oh, no problem. He goes, then he says, I've got the blood of Akasha, who
Yeah, and
is she the
that's
that's
off canon. That's the
yeah,
Queen of the Damned.
she's like the great grandmommy of the vampires.
Yep,
But and that's not canon because he doesn't have her blood in him yet, or
right. Like he doesn't yet. That's later. That's much later. So they're twisting a little bit of the timeline, but that's all right. At least that explains a little bit of Lestat's powers, or more of his powers, because he has a lot more in this particular
then he should being
imagining than he should at this point.
yeah, being younger than Armand.
Um,
Yeah,
but there's a lot of like glances and knowing glances and weird interactions between Lestat and Armand in this that are pretty amazing. Again, these actors seem to have a lot of fun doing this, and this was a really good scene and has so many double meanings within the things that Lestat is saying. And there is an amazing amount of anxiety that Armand is showing with his face. And part of this is what's revealed later on in the episode. But basically, Louis is like, I'm not going to kill you, but my vengeance is that you'll never be as happy as me and Armand." And Lestat is just like very nonchalant about how he says, well, go and enjoy yourselves and let's see how long it lasts, kind of a very taunting little comment, and Malloy catches that pretty quickly. Um, so I thought this was a pretty great scene that leads to some things that Malloy then kind of lays all the cards on the table.
yeah.
Um, so again, I agree with you that the Talamasca thing, that they're feeding evidence, they're feeding things to him, feels a little bit not, it just feels a little too easy. And also like it seems like it might not be possible given their level of ability to pull things out of people's minds, but I guess we'll just have to take that at face value, you know.
It's funny that they finished the story and they're like, and that's the end of the interview. That was that, and there's nothing
Hmm.
else. And then Malloy's like, I have a few follow-ups. And he has
Yep.
all of this. He pulls out his manila envelope that was handed to him by Rashid, and I'm glad that Rashid got out of the apartment after that.
Yep. Rashid's like, I'm out of here, man.
And but then Malloy just has like these follow-up questions about, hey, was Sam here or was he here during, because he's in two places at once in your story.
Yep.
And Armand is quick to be like, no, he was guarding me the whole time. And there's some of this, like some more of this unreliable narration is the excuse given for some of these mistakes, or where Louis is just like, well, I guess I got it wrong. And then the really insightful thing is when Malloy is like, and what about that time that there were like 15 soldiers inside, or 30 soldiers inside your apartment in New Orleans,
Hmm.
and Lestat was able to convince them all to leave. And
Right.
this is obviously his own leap of logic, not leap, but he just got here on his own, and that's a good thing for them to write into for his character to be like,
Right.
remember like 20 interviews ago, or during this whole long, lengthy interview that he's been doing, you told me about this thing that Lestat could do. Well, that means that Armand isn't the only one who could have done the thing. And so I was glad that they explained that. Did you see this coming?
Well, yes, because I mean, I knew it had to be something like this because that's pretty, it's a slightly less dramatic storyline, but this is um there is a betrayal of Armand to Louis, and this is definitely a part of the storyline, but they did it in a much more dramatic fashion here.
Yeah.
Um and you know, basically Malloy calls out all these things and like gaps and problems, and then he has pretty much the smoking gun, so to speak, which
Oh yeah.
is the script, which is script where Armand has been writing in the sidelines, whatever, and it's a script for the trial play. And this is evidence that Armand had been like lying to Louis this entire time, that he had directed the play, that it was him that was calling for Claudia's death, and even in a more dramatic fashion, and that it was Lestat and not Armand that saved Louis. And I do think that this makes sense, and I do like how it's called out because Lestat is so much more powerful than Armand and has a reason for saving Louis. And this is just a complete, basically, all artifice has now dropped and everything is exposed for what it is. And I mean, I think if you're Louis, I think his reaction is relatively mild compared to what I think it could have been, given that he's been essentially living a lie for the past 70 years with Armand. That their tenuous, in this case, I think, tenuous connection um, is just done. Because it's like he could never forgive him for Claudia, which he already said, but this is even worse. Because he's been basically living with the guy who wanted him dead for all this time. So anyway, I thought that that was a really great reveal. I thought it was a great reveal, just sort of like the back fill with the different scenes where Armand is taking an active role in all of this. Um, and yeah, and that leads to the fireworks at the end. And Daniel's given a pretty direct message from the Talamasca. It's like, hey, you need to get out of there because things all hell is going to break loose now that this has been revealed.
Yeah.
Um,
Which he doesn't
and
do, to kind of to his
no, because
credit.
he wants to see it. He wants to see it. I know. I don't blame him.
And you just said that Lestat is way more powerful than Armand. That's also not canon at this point in the story, as far as I'm aware. Um, because Armand
He
is like 200 years
is
older than Lestat, and
He
that's
is, but Lestat has the blood of Magnus, who had never made a fledgling,
yeah.
and so he is more powerful than Armand. They just have different powers.
But then here, like Malloy is thinking about leaving, and then the apartment kind of like gets blown up a little bit, or at least the
Hmm.
library does. And he walks around a wall, and there's Louis, and he's thrown Armand into a wall and lets a giant crater. Armand is bleeding. Louis like, I'm gonna go out for a little while. When I come back, you need to be gone. And if I ever see you
Hmm.
again, I'm gonna kill you. And also, don't hurt Malloy. Don't touch him. Um, and I'm Yeah, I think we've kind of talked about this enough times that it's odd that they've decided to empower Louis as much as they have. Maybe he's
Right.
just saying, I will kill you, and it's absolutely impossible because Armand is completely more
Right.
powerful than him. And the only reason Armand isn't defending himself is out of some sort of weird love that he feels for Louis or
Oh,
guilt.
I think it's out of love and guilt. And he's
Yeah.
been living with this secret for so long. I don't think it's that Louis has the powers that he could totally destroy Armand, but he does have a hold over Armand, obviously, since they've been together these 70 years, and that Armand's been willing to basically live this lie because he just doesn't want to let Louis go. So I don't know that it's more of this power that Louis has that would be, I think it's the hold he has on him emotionally.
Yeah. That could be it. The last thing Louis does is he walks out of the apartment is set Malloy's laptop on fire, which is
Mm,
confusing for me
yeah,
considering
me too.
how the rest of the episode goes. But the first thing he does after he leaves, well, I don't know if it's the first thing, but it's later. Um, the next thing that happens, the next scene, he's in a Uber or something in back in New Orleans, going and checking into a hotel during a hurricane. He goes on a tour of like haunted houses or historical tour of New
Hmm.
Orleans where a guy badly mistells the story of their townhouse and the
Yes, but
child
it's kind of
bride. And
amusing. It's
yeah,
kind of amusing since he's a starring role in that. So,
yeah, it's funny. All the names are kind of wrong, but it's
hmm.
still like it's still funny. And then he just happens to see a vampire just down the
Yeah.
street, smoking cigarettes and catching. Oh, I keep hitting my mic. Smoking cigarettes and catching rats, and follows
Hmm.
him back to a decrepit old house where we have our reunion.
Yep. And what a reunion it is. It's actually, Lestat's not doing well, but he's still powerful, more powerful than the fledgling, and he's really like um belligerent and, sad, and he's living in this wreck of a house. And I will say that this is in a very emotional reunion between the two of them, and they say a lot that is incredibly moving. I mean, they talk about, Louis is basically like, "Why didn't you tell me like what you did before?" And Lestat's basically like, "You had to find out yourself." And just and even them talking about um, Claudia and her death, and both of them mourning her death. And Lestat talks about how she looked at him right before she died. And that is like, the parents losing a child is incredibly difficult, even though it's a vampire child. But this whole connection between the two of them and this healing between the two of them is really just I think it's probably the strongest scene in the entire series.
I fully agree. The just the work that Sam Reed does here,
Mhm,
from going from the bigger versions of Lestat that we've usually see, usually he's, the just like the light is on him and he's the biggest kind of presence in the room. He shrinks himself down so much in this scene,
mhm.
that it's just phenomenal work. And I
And
really liked him.
he's somebody that's like at the end of his resources. Like you can tell, like he has just been, I mean, he's been depressed, he's been mourning, he has been just in pain. Both of them have. And so after all of these years and after all of the things that they have been through and the pain that they have caused each other, to find that healing and to heal that rift is really powerful. But it's also not excusing it per se, because it's not, which I think is a realistic thing. Like I don't know that you could ever come back from certain pieces of this, but it's not. But it's basically it's a healing for both of them, and moving forward versus and forgiveness, I guess. And
Some
the
version
other
of it.
part, some version of it, and Louise' comments too are just also. I mean, the like these two actors did such an amazing job in this, because you could have gone very wrong in the scene and not had this be as powerful as it was. Um, and I thought it was just an incredible bit of writing, acting, and editing.
Yeah. And
So,
to me, what's going on in this scene also with Lestat is like talking about going on tour. He seems kind of out of his mind because he's playing a
oh
wooden
yeah,
piano or keyboard, and
yep,
he's playing kind of like I don't even know what piece of music it is, but it's not what I think of when I think of his next career move that he goes to
right,
in subsequent books, but it's at least a hint that he's thinking about performing music on
yep.
stage, which is kind of something that I would look forward to seeing if they do a season three. I feel like they're sort of setting the groundwork for him having that interest here. Even though I thought he was like a guitarist or a singer or something. I don't remember exactly what he does in the next in his
Oh,
music.
I think he does both, and he does singer, he does piano and other things.
Okay.
But he's just ridiculous, and I'm kind of interested to see if they do that, and I'd really love to see it. But I also, the I was going the one piece I do want to talk about, one of the biggest and most powerful pieces of just emotional connection and pain between them is when Lestat asks if Louis tried to hurt himself, and I thought that that
Oh,
was
yeah.
like heartbreaking.
Oh,
And
God, yeah.
yeah, like it's
Because
really
he
this is a
knows the
very
exact date and the exact time
yep.
when Armand reached out. Yeah, that was fantastic. Phenomenal writing and performance. Yeah, that scene really does make every all the questions and like little issues that I bring up meaningless in the face of that scene. And it's kind of funny or wrenching to go from that scene with the hurricane growing and growing in intensity also. Like that's a cool part of the background of that scene, with that like decrepit old house that Lestat is staying in.
Yep.
And then we switch to Malloy being on TV in a really hostile interview about his book
Mm-hmm.
from Gale from Breaking Bad. I don't know what this guy's name is, but that's all I can think of when I see him. Uh, yeah, he was like Walter White's sidekick in one later season of Breaking Bad. Um, and it's a extremely hostile and an aggressive interview where he's giving Malloy all a hard time for like breaking his journalistic integrity and writing a fictional memoir.
Hmm.
And Malloy doesn't take kindly to this, and he ends up just calling the guy a hack. And the interview, I would say, doesn't go so well. What did you think of this scene?
Like, I think he's Malloy at his most Malloy. And, the reveal, which is, that's one part that I kind of wish we knew a little bit more about, but
Well, that's certainly a
um,
hint at yeah, future season. If they go there, they can tell us more about what happened. But
right. But, the big reveal is that Malloy's a vampire and he's acting in such a like crazy way, although it was kind of funny. Um, and then that leads to his next interaction with Louis. Um, and this is, basically Malloy's just kind of like, hey, because I did this and you told me all this, all hell's breaking loose, and you're gonna be hunted. Though you would think Malloy would also be hunted. I guess maybe he's taking some care about this. And Louis is just kind of like, I'm just gonna let him come for me, and sends out this like crazy telepathic thing, which again, I guess we have to assume that Louis has a lot more powers than he used to. But
yeah,
um he's still in his penthouse. He's still kind of like, you know, hanging out there and basically a target. But he says he's not scared and that essentially vengeance is mine. And I don't know what that means, and that's, you know, definitely a little different from the canon of the book. But we'll see where they go from here. I would really like to see more of Sam Reed and Jacob Anderson, but and to see what would happen next. But at least as far as the books, and I think we've seen any kind of adaptations go, like Vampire Lestat and Queen of the Damned kind of go off the rails. So we'll have to
yeah,
see. I will say I do have faith in these creators because I do like the changes that they have made, and so I kind of trust that they would do this well, and that they could make enough edits to make it not bad. Because I do think that this has been a great adaptation of these books. So
yeah.
we'll
I
have to
think
see.
if they try to go to like, oh, Lestat goes and meets the devil, I have to check out. Which I do think is what happens later on in the books.
It's a lot later on though, so hopefully, like these last the ones that are part of the trilogy, I would say it's like Interview with the Vampire, Vampire Lestat are still both good and revealing some things, but then Queen of the Damned goes off the rails a bit. But I mean, it's been renewed for season three. So I do think that I think you're going to have your wish that it's going to be all about like his life as a rock star. So we'll have to see what
Yeah,
happens.
cool. So my
But
prediction, no, not prediction, but my guess on Malloy is that I mean it's pretty heavily hinted at in this that scene where he takes off his glasses and his eyes change color to orange, which is the same color as Armand's eyes. So
mhm.
and Louis basically says I shouldn't have left you alone with him. They don't say his name, but it's almost
Yep.
certainly that Armand decided to make his first fledgling and it was Daniel. So
Yep.
he's probably pretty beefy too, as vampire fledglings go.
True. True. So we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm
but
just I'm just noticing. I'm looking at a freeze frame of Louis sitting in his like Zen room when he's about to communicate with all the vampires and tell them to shut up. There's a painting of his brother on the wall. I didn't realize that that was what that
yeah,
was.
there's also the other part is that there's I don't know if you saw like Claudia's dress.
Claudia's dress. I do. Yeah, I did see that. I noticed that while we were watching it because it was a very noticeable,
Yep.
yellow dress in that trial scene. But the brother portrait I hadn't noticed. Yeah,
I also want to point out that AMC did release the during Comic-Con, they released a teaser trailer for season three.
get out.
And
Really?
yeah, and then they have a glammed up Lestat. So I guess we will have to take a peek at that. I don't know how we missed that, but I just looked up season three and found it.
Jeez. Okay.
And it shows his hit song. I don't know what this means, but we'll have to see. We'll have to take a look at that. But so I'm excited about that. That bodes well if they're already that far into production. So I wonder when this would get released. So I would imagine sometime next year again, right?
Like yeah, if they're already in production, probably June 26th it was renewed. So I don't know. It might be another year and a half to 2 years.
Yeah, it could be.
Depends how much CGI they have to do, right?
True. But again, maybe they're looking like you have some pretty incredible actors in this that may have schedules that they
Yeah.
have to keep, and so maybe they're also looking to get this finished. If they're already releasing teaser trailers, I'm wondering if they're pretty far along in the production and maybe it's just editing or
Mm.
something else at this point. So we'll have to see what happens with that, but I'm very excited about it. Can't wait to see it. Although I will reserve judgment until I see this teaser trailer because I am worried about the whole Rockstar thing. I don't, did you read you never read any of these, or did you?
I had it's been too many years for me to even recall the plot, but yeah.
So
I definitely read Queen
I'll
of the Damned. Is I don't remember which book it is that he does start doing rock and roll. I think it's Queen of
Well,
the
all
Damned.
I will say is that his songs are really bad, and so let's hope they come up with something a little bit better. As I said, I have faith in these creators. I think that they are really good and they get it.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see how this will play out. So yeah. Um, all right. Well, anything else to add?
I think that's about it, other than the next thing that we should do. We've talked about it a few times. There is a Zomedy out there in streaming land. I think it's on Screambox called,
Mhm.
oh God, what was it called? We Are Zombies. I
Yep,
think that's what it's called. And that I think is what we should talk about the next time we get together.
that sounds great.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Awesome. You know what? As much as we complained about this, should not complained, but noted that it was a bit of a slow burn over and over again. Yeah, you get a couple of scenes like between Sam Reed and Jacob Anderson, and how the hell can you not just say, you know what, it was worth it. It was all great. It's tough. It's yeah. What a magnificent show. I'm glad we got to watch it.
Yep. And again, more of Jacob Anderson and Sam Reed. I think that they are awesome. I would like to see them in many other things. They're really good. So
Yeah.
that's what I have to say about that. Grey Worm is making good.
He's doing great. Okay. Well,
Um,
if you want to send us an email, you can do that by emailing reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. Our episodes are online at reanimated.podbean.com. So please holler at us and join us again next time on Reanimated.
until next time, thanks for listening and ciao.